$6 billion walked out the door in 72 hours. A company worth $32 billion 1 year earlier had no money to give back because the money was never really there. It had been quietly handed to a hedge fund run by the same man to cover bets that had already lost. One tweet pulled the curtain. Here's how an $8 billion hole stayed invisible until it wasn't. And here's the part that should make your skin crawl. Every person paid to catch this had already seen the warning signs. The investors who waived their checks, the accountants nobody trusted, no board, no chief financial officer, no controls of any kind. They all looked at a $32 billion empire run by a kid in cargo shorts, and they decided not to check his math. Hold that thought. Sam Bankman-Fried founded FTX in spring 2019 with Gary Wang. But the important thing already existed. Alameda Research, his crypto trading firm, started in 2017. So one man now controlled two things that should never sit under the same roof: an exchange that holds your deposits and a hedge fund that gambles with its own. The wall between them was supposed to be sacred. It was a lie from the start, and the money poured in. By January 2022, FTX raised $400 million in a Series C and hit a valuation of $32 billion. Sequoia and the biggest names in venture capital lined up. They put Bankman-Fried on magazine covers. He played video games during pitch meetings, and they loved it. The narrative wrote itself. Boy genius, too smart to steal. That narrative was the security system. Here is the actual machine. FTX gave Alameda a secret, effectively unlimited line of credit backed by your deposits. An engineer named Nishad Singh wrote special code into FTX risk engine. While every other customer got auto-liquidated when a bet went bad, Alameda was exempt. It could trade with a negative balance and never get cut off. The casino let one player keep playing on the house's money forever. And what was holding the whole thing up? A token FTX printed itself. It was called FTT. FTX created it, FTX largely controlled it, and Alameda's balance sheet was stuffed with it. That's the trick at the heart of everything. Using money you invented to back the money you owe. On paper, Alameda looked rich. In reality, it was holding collateral it could never actually sell at scale without crashing its own price. When the leaked balance sheet finally surfaced, the numbers were absurd. Alameda claimed $14.6 billion in assets, but roughly 40% of that was FTT, the token its sister company minted. And against those assets sat around $9 billion in liabilities. A hedge fund's biggest asset was a coin its owner could conjure out of thin air. That's not a portfolio. That's a hall of mirrors with a price tag. Then the bets went bad. In the May and June 2022 crypto crash, Alameda took massive losses. A normal firm absorbs that, or it dies. Alameda did neither. Bankman-Fried quietly funneled customer deposits out of FTX to plug Alameda's hole. Real people's money used to cover a hedge fund's failed gambles with no disclosure, no approval, no daily reconciliation against the blockchain to even notice it was gone. The liability grew to around $8 billion. And inside FTX, they had a name for the account where it was buried. They called it our Korean friends account, a joke, an inside joke for an $8 billion fraud. The software hid the misuse, the books told a story, and the people who could have asked the obvious question simply didn't. Because remember, he was the boy genius. Why would you check his math? So, where were the watchdogs? There weren't any. John Ray, the man who later cleaned it up, found no functioning board of directors, no chief financial officer, no proper accounting, no cash management, no audit anyone could trust. Sequoia owned less than 1% and was refused a board seat. The blue-chip investors who could have demanded controls decided the magazine covers were diligence enough. This is the channel's recurring sin. The people paid to catch it were warned, and they looked away. venture firms ran a light diligence on a man who admitted he kept his empire's finances in a fog. The auditors were so obscure that customers and rivals openly mocked them. Every guardrail that should have caught an $8 billion gap was either missing or asleep. The fraud was simple. The negligence around it was total. November 2nd, 2022. CoinDesk publishes Alameda's leaked balance sheet, and the world sees the FTT problem in black and white. 4 days later, a rival pulls the trigger. Changpeng Zhao, CEO of Binance, tweets that his firm will liquidate its own large pile of FTT, citing recent revelations. He didn't have to lie. He just had to point. The most flammable collateral in crypto, and a billionaire holding a match. FTT cratered, and every customer did the math at the same time. They rushed for the exits. In a normal stretch, FTX saw tens of millions in withdrawals a day. Now, around $6 billion tried to leave in 72 hours. The exchange couldn't pay because the money wasn't sitting in FTX. It was at Alameda, long gone into losing trades. So FTX did the only thing it could. It froze withdrawals. For one strange day, it looked like a rescue. On November 8th, Binance signed a non-binding letter of intent to buy FTX. The man who lit the fire would now own the ashes. Then Binance's people actually opened the books. One look. On November 9th, they walked away. There was no deal to make because there was no company underneath. Just a hole where customer money used to be. November 11th, 2022. FTX files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Not one company, but FTX, Alameda, and roughly 130 affiliated entities, all collapsing together. Bankman-Fried resigns. A restructuring veteran named John Ray, the man who wound down Enron, takes over. He's seen corporate disasters most people can't imagine, and what he found here still stopped him cold. His words. In a sworn court filing 6 days later, never in his career had he seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. 40-plus years cleaning up the worst corporate frauds in history, and FTX was the worst he'd ever seen. Company funds bought luxury homes in employees' names. Expenses approved with emojis. The richest crypto exchange on earth ran like a group chat with a billion-dollar bank account. The law moved fast. December 12th, 2022, Bankman-Fried is arrested in the Bahamas. He's extradited and released on a $250 million bail package, later revoked when prosecutors said he tampered with witnesses. And his inner circle turns. Caroline Ellison, who ran Alameda, and Gary Wang plead guilty in December. Nishad Singh follows in February. All three cooperate, describing the fraud to prosecutors from the inside. November 2nd, 2023. The jury comes back, guilty on all 7 counts, 2 of wire fraud, 2 of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, plus conspiracy charges for securities fraud, commodities fraud, and money laundering. Every single count. On March 28th, 2024, the sentence, 25 years in prison, and a forfeiture order of roughly $11 billion. The kid who was too smart to steal was convicted of stealing on every charge they brought. And then the strangest twist of all, the hole got refilled. As crypto recovered and the estate's assets, including a stake in an AI company, soared in value, John Ray's team pulled off the impossible. The court-approved plan pays roughly 98% of creditors 118% of their claim. Others get 100% plus interest. On paper, customers got back more than they lost. But read the fine print. Those payouts are frozen at November 2022 prices, the day FTX went bankrupt. If you held one Bitcoin worth $16,000 then, you got that dollar value back, not the coin, which went on to climb far higher. Regulators tallied the real damage too. The CFTC won a $12.7 billion judgment against FTX and Alameda. So customers were made whole and still lost a fortune in upside. Both things are true. Strip away the crypto and the cargo shorts, and FTX is an old story. A founder who turned trust into a license to skip every control. And it rhymes with the ones we've already told. Enron didn't move the customer cash, it faked the profits, inventing earnings out of accounting tricks while auditors signed off. Same disease, different organ. The watchdogs warned, then waved it through. And then there's Wirecard, which didn't fake the profits or move the deposits. It faked the cash itself. Nearly 2 billion euros that auditors swore existed, sitting in accounts that simply weren't real. FTX moved real money it shouldn't have. Wirecard pointed at money that was never there at all. 3 frauds, 1 spine. The people paid to catch it were warned and they looked away. Both of those films are waiting for you. FTX wasn't complicated. 1 man, 2 firms, a token he printed, and a wall that was never real. The genius wasn't the fraud. It was convincing a room full of professionals that they didn't need to check. If you want the stories behind the numbers, the diligence that never happened, and the warnings everyone ignored, subscribe. There's always another set of books that doesn't add up. We'll read the next one for you.